Hello everyone, and welcome to my Bold and Beautiful Today channel. Brooke called for help in the middle of the sea. Nick dragged from behind when Ridge gave a jump to the sea to rescue Brooke. Brooke is in the hospital. Brooke will be fine after this water rescue, therefore Ridge Forrester's courage and foresight will be rewarded. Even though Brooke will survive and recover swiftly, she will still be admitted to the hospital after the entire incident. Ridge might demonstrate his compassion by insisting that Brooke be examined by a physician. Ridge's attention will undoubtedly be on Brooke, so he will spoil her and see to it that she is inspected as soon as possible. Any barriers Ridge erected to prevent his reunion with Brooke have obviously collapsed. In the upcoming episodes, Ridge will have to deal with the old emotions that have returned with a vengeance, filling his heart to overflowing. When a surprising phone call arrives, Hope will still be at Bill Spencer's house with Liam Spencer. According to BNB teasers, Brooke will be the one to phone Hope and deliver the disturbing news. Of course, Hope should feel a little more at rest knowing that Brooke will be the one phoning. At least Hope will be able to talk to Brooke and know that he's okay. Nevertheless, when Hope learns that Brooke fell off Nick Marone's boat and may have been in major jeopardy without Ridge's assistance, she will be devastated. Brooke might tell Hope that her hospitalization is only a precaution and call Ridge her hero. Hope could feel a little better about the situation by the time she cuts off communication with Brooke. After stating that she would return home shortly, Brooke might end the call by saying that everything is fine. Liam will be equally as frightened by the danger that emerged in Naples once Hope tells him what she learned from Brooke. Hope will tell Liam the same tumultuous tale, and he might finally change his mind and consider whether this is indeed a good thing for Brooke's romantic future. Ridge kisses Brooke and does CPR. After performing CPR and giving Brooke Logan a kiss, Ridge Forrester vowed to do things right. Ridge had to swim to an unconscious Brooke in the lake when Nick Marone passed out after falling from his boat. After dragging Brooke to another ship, Ridge received assistance getting her on board. Ridge tried to revive Brooke's lungs by doing chest compressions as she was no longer breathing. Brooke, meantime, noticed a dazzling light and thought she and Ridge were on a beach. Ridge gave Brooke a deep kiss after she eventually sputtered out water and returned to him. Ridge also pledged that they would do this right and that he would never again take Brooke for granted. Brooke Logan's throat was less a sound of human agency and more the raw, primal shriek of the sea itself rending the fragile membrane of hope, a guttural, terror-choked help, that ripped through the deceptive calm settling momentarily over the vast, indifferent expanse of the Mediterranean. It wasn't the calculated cry of someone expecting immediate salvation, but the visceral, involuntary expulsion of pure, unadulterated panic as the reality of her isolation truly crystallized, the sleek, impossibly distant silhouette of the yacht, now a mere smudge on the shimmering horizon, the deceptive warmth of the sun replaced by the chilling, bone-deep embrace of the deep blue, the terrifying realization that the gentle lapping waves were, in fact, a relentless, uncaring force slowly sapping her strength, pulling her further from the vanishing world above. Her earlier struggle, a frantic but focused treading water fueled by adrenaline and disbelief, had devolved into a desperate, flailing fight for mere buoyancy, each gasp drawing in not just life-giving air but also a mouthful of stinging saltwater that burned her throat and blurred her vision. The weight of her clothes, once insignificant, now felt like anchors woven into her very skin, dragging her relentlessly towards the crushing darkness below, while the sun, previously a comforting companion, now beat down with a cruel, mocking indifference, bleaching the sky and reflecting off the water's surface in blinding shards that disoriented her further. Every muscle screamed in protest, her lungs burned like forge bellows filled with acid, and the chilling fear wasn't just of drowning, but the terrifyingly intimate sensation of being drowned by the immense, silent pressure of the ocean, an entity vast and ancient and utterly devoid of mercy. Her mind flickered with fragmented images, laughter on the deck, the clink of glasses, a careless misstep near the railing, the shocking plunge into cold oblivion, before collapsing back into the singular, horrifying present, the endless water, the terrifying silence broken only by her own ragged gasps and the indifferent sigh of the waves, the terrifying certainty that this immense, beautiful blue desert was to be her lonely, suffocating tomb. On the distant, tilting deck of the yacht, pandemonium had erupted the moment Brooke's absence was noted, a frantic search transforming into icy dread when her scream, thin and desperate but unmistakable, pierced the hum of the engines and the wind. Nick Marone, his heart hammering against his ribs like a trapped bird, was the first to pinpoint the horrifying source, a tiny, thrashing dot in the yacht's churning wake, rapidly receding as the vessel, carried by its own momentum and the current, continued its forward path. Without conscious thought, driven by a surge of protective fury and desperate love that obliterated all caution, Nick had already torn off his shirt and vaulted the teak railing before anyone could formulate a plan. The impact with the water was a shocking, brutal slap of cold that stole his breath, but he surfaced instantly, lungs heaving, eyes laser-focused on Brooke's distant, struggling form. He struck out with powerful, adrenaline-fueled strokes, every fiber of his being screaming Brooke. "Hold on. I'm coming." The distance, deceptive from the deck, now yawned like a chasm. Each stroke felt monumental, the current subtly but persistently pulling against him, the yacht's wake creating chaotic, choppy swells that buffeted him, forcing him to fight not just towards her, but simply to stay on course. He could see her now, more clearly, the pale flash of her arm above the water, the dark swirl of her hair as she momentarily went under, resurfacing with a choked gasp that carried across the water like a physical blow. "Brooke," he roared, his voice raw, pushing himself harder, ignoring the burning in his shoulders, the cold seeping into his bones. He was closing the gap, agonizingly slowly, but closing it. 15 yards, 10. He could see the utter terror etched on her face, the wide, unseeing eyes fixed on the sky, her movements growing weaker, more erratic. 5 yards. He stretched out his arm, fingers straining, muscles screaming. "Grab my hand. Brooke." He was almost there, fingertips brushing the churning water just feet from her flailing grasp, when the insidious power of the sea truly revealed itself. A larger wave, born of the yacht's passage and the underlying current, surged between them, not a towering wall, but a deceptively powerful swell that lifted Brooke momentarily higher, carrying her just out of reach, while simultaneously pushing Nick down and slightly aside. As he fought back to the surface, coughing, he saw her being pulled away, not by yards, but by precious, agonizing feet that felt like miles. He lunged forward again, a desperate, energy-sapping burst, his hand closing on nothing but water. Brooke, her strength utterly spent, her consciousness flickering like a dying candle, succumbed to the wave's pull, her head dipping below the surface, only a desperate, bubbling gasp marking her descent. In that heart-stopping instant, Nick's world narrowed to that vanishing point. He took a huge, ragged breath, ready to dive after her into the suffocating blue, his mind screaming denial. But before he could plunge beneath the waves, before he could fully commit to the desperate pursuit into the depths, a blur of motion, a visceral shout ripped from a soul consumed by equal parts terror and fury, exploded past him. Ridge Forrester, having arrived at the rail just as Nick jumped, had assessed the scene with terrifying speed, Nick's valiant but faltering approach, Brooke's weakening struggles, the cruel intervention of the wave, her final, desperate slip beneath the surface. There was no calculation in Ridge, no weighing of risks, no hesitation born of rivalry or past wounds. In that fraction of a second where Brooke disappeared, the woman who was the chaotic, passionate, undeniable center of his universe for so long, the anchor of his deepest joys and most shattering pains, was being swallowed by the abyss. Every cell in Ridge's body ignited with a white-hot, primal imperative that bypassed thought entirely. Love, regret, possessiveness, an unbreakable, tangled bond forged in decades of fire, it all coalesced into pure, unadulterated action. With a guttural roar that seemed to tear the very air, he launched himself from the deck in a perfect, desperate arc, a missile aimed not just at the water, but at the exact, horrifying spot where Brooke had vanished. His jump wasn't graceful, it was a violent, kinetic explosion of pure will, sacrificing all control for the single, vital objective, intercept her descent now. Nick, still gasping, arm still outstretched towards the empty water where Brooke had been, could only watch in stunned, agonized disbelief as Ridge's body cut through the air above him. The splash as Ridge hit was tremendous, close to where Brooke had gone under. Nick felt the shockwave ripple through the water, a physical manifestation of the seismic shift in the rescue attempt. For a paralyzing second, Nick hovered, torn between diving after them both and the crushing realization that Ridge, unburdened by the swim, was infinitely better positioned to reach her now. The surface churned violently where Ridge had entered, then fell eerily still, revealing nothing but the indifferent, sun-dappled blue expanse. Time stretched, warped, became an unbearable torture. Nick tread water, scanning the surface frantically, his breath coming in ragged, useless gasps, the cold forgotten, replaced by a deeper, more terrifying chill, the chill of utter helplessness. Below him, in the muted, distorted world beneath the waves, Ridge was already kicking downwards with furious, powerful strokes, his eyes straining against the salt sting, scanning the sunlit, particle-filled water. The panic he'd felt on the surface was gone, replaced by a terrifyingly focused calm, a hunter's intensity. And then he saw her, a pale, limp shape sinking slowly, almost gracefully, like a discarded doll, her hair fanning out like dark seaweed, bubbles escaping her slightly parted lips in a silent, heartbreaking stream. She wasn't struggling. She wasn't moving. The sight struck him with the force of a physical blow, but it only fueled his desperate propulsion. He surged downward, closing the distance with powerful kicks, the pressure building in his ears, the light dimming slightly. He reached her just as she drifted past the last band of strong sunlight into a deeper, cooler gloom. His arms, strong and sure despite the burning in his lungs, wrapped around her torso, pulling her inert form tightly against him. Her skin felt cold, terrifyingly cold. He couldn't see if her chest moved. There was no time. Kicking hard, lungs screaming for air he couldn't afford to seek, he turned them both towards the shimmering, impossibly distant surface far above, a liquid ceiling separating life from the crushing silence below. He drove upwards with every ounce of strength and terror-fueled will he possessed, Brooke a dead weight in his arms, the surface light beckoning like a mirage, the weight of the water and the weight of potential loss an unbearable burden. Nick, still treading above, saw the disturbance first, a violent roiling of the surface, followed by the explosive eruption of Ridge's head and shoulders, gasping, coughing, hauling air into his starving lungs, one arm locked in a vice-like grip around Brooke's chest, her head lolling limply against his shoulder, her face deathly pale, water streaming from her slack mouth and closed eyes. The rescue had begun with a scream in the void, faltered with Nick's agonizing near miss, and culminated in this desperate, gasping emergence, Ridge surfacing from the silent depths with the woman they both loved, her life hanging by the thinnest of threads, suspended between the abyss and the fragile, sunlit air. The ordeal wasn't over, the frantic swim back, the battle to get her aboard, the desperate fight for breath, but in that shattering moment of emergence, the sea had relinquished its prey, though whether it had relinquished her life remained the terrifying, unanswered question etched on Ridge's stricken face as he fought to keep Brooke's head above the relentless waves, his eyes locking with Nick's in a shared universe of dread and fragile, hard-won hope. Nick Moran's luxurious vessel, transformed in a heartbeat into a churning tableau of primal terror. Brooke Logan's sudden, shocking plunge into the Mediterranean's embrace wasn't just a physical fall, it was the catalyst for an emotional earthquake, the epicenter of which resided squarely in the chest of Ridge Forrester. His reaction, a visceral, unthinking surge of protective fury, saw him slicing through the water with the desperation of a man confronting his deepest fear made manifest. His rescue wasn't merely swift, it was an act of pure instinct, a testament to a connection that decades of heartbreak, betrayal, and stubbornly erected walls could never truly sever. And now, as the frantic rush of the ambulance subsides into the sterile, antiseptic hum of the Naples hospital corridor, the immediate terror of drowning recedes, replaced by the profound relief that Brooke is going to be just fine. Ridge's bravery and lightning-quick response pulled her back from the brink, ensuring she will live to tell the tale. Medical professionals, efficient and reassuring, confirm she swallowed some seawater and endured significant shock, but her vital signs are strong, her spirit already flickering back with characteristic Logan resilience. She will undoubtedly bounce back quickly from the physical ordeal. Yet, the shadow of what could have been looms large, dictating protocol and overriding any protest. Brooke will still be taken to the hospital for thorough observation, a necessary precaution after such a traumatic event. Here, in the harsh fluorescent light, Ridge Forrester undergoes his own transformation. The adrenaline-fueled hero of the boat deck melts away, revealing a man stripped bare by fear and fueled by a resurgence of emotion he'd fought desperately to bury. Gone is the carefully curated distance, the hardened facade he'd worn like armor against the magnetic pull of Brooke Logan. Watching her, pale but conscious on the gurney, wrapped in scratchy hospital blankets, the walls Ridge built up to stop his Brooke reunion have come tumbling down, reduced to rubble by the sheer, blinding terror of almost losing her. His heart isn't just beating, it feels like it's bursting, overwhelmed by the old feelings that have come roaring back with the force of a tsunami, a potent cocktail of protectiveness, tenderness, and a love that never truly died, merely hibernated beneath layers of pain and pride. He hovers, a restless, imposing presence, his designer clothes salt-stained and clinging, his expression a complex map of relief, lingering panic, and undisguised devotion. He doesn't just suggest, he will insist on getting Brooke checked out by a doctor, his voice leaving no room for argument, a low rumble masking the tremor of residual fear. This is Ridge showing off his caring side in its most raw and unfiltered form. Every interaction with the medical staff is tinged with an intensity that borders on possessiveness, questioning procedures, demanding updates, his gaze rarely leaving Brooke's face. Brooke will definitely be Ridge's focus, eclipsing everything else. He will dote on her, adjusting her pillow with surprising gentleness, his large hand briefly covering hers, fetching water the instant she murmurs a request. His entire being is attuned to her comfort, her safety. He will make sure she gets examined ASAP, subtly pressuring the staff, his concern manifesting as a fierce, almost primal need to see her declared unequivocally safe, to have tangible proof that the nightmare is truly over. Meanwhile, continents away in the opulent, tension-filled atmosphere of Bill Spencer's mansion, a different kind of storm brews, momentarily eclipsed by the mundane. Hope Logan is ensconced with Liam Spencer, navigating the treacherous waters of their own complicated history and current alliances, perhaps seeking solace or strategizing amidst the Spencer family dynamics. The air is thick with unspoken words and unresolved feelings when the sharp, intrusive ring of a phone shatters the fragile calm. It's a stunning phone call, arriving like a bolt from the blue. B&B spoilers confirm it'll be Brooke herself who calls Hope, her voice, though perhaps slightly breathless or edged with exhaustion, delivering the unsettling news directly. The very sound of her mother's voice acts as Hope's first anchor in the sudden maelstrom. Of course, the fact that Brooke will be the one calling should put Hope's mind at ease somewhat. The terrifying alternative scenarios that flash instantly through a daughter's mind, calls from strangers, doctors, the ominous silence, are momentarily banished. At least Hope will know that Brooke's okay and able to have this conversation with her. Relief floods her, warm and immediate, a lifeline thrown across the miles. Yet, that relief is instantly complicated, fractured by the horrifying details Brooke relays. Hope's world tilts, she will reel when she finds out Brooke fell off Nick Marone's boat. The idyllic image of her mother on a Mediterranean cruise evaporates, replaced by the visceral horror of imagining her plunged into the vast, uncaring sea. The terrifying implication, she could have been in serious trouble without Ridge's help, lands like a physical blow, forcing Hope to confront the razor-thin margin between this phone call and utter catastrophe. As Brooke narrates the chaotic events, her tone likely shifts, moving from the shock of the fall to the profound gratitude for her rescue. Brooke may praise Ridge as her hero, her voice softening with an emotion Hope hasn't heard directed at Ridge in a long time. She might recount his fearless dive, his strength pulling her to safety, the sheer, undeniable fact of his presence being the difference between life and unthinkable loss. This narrative serves a dual purpose, informing Hope and subtly processing the emotional earthquake for Brooke herself. Crucially, Brooke will assure Hope that her hospitalization is just a precaution, emphasizing the positive prognosis, the competent care, the absence of critical injury. She'll downplay her own lingering shakiness, her focus laser-sharp on alleviating her daughter's distress. Just being thorough, sweetheart, she might say, her voice striving for normalcy. By the time Hope disconnects from Brooke, she may feel a little better about the situation. The initial panic subsides, replaced by a manageable anxiety. Brooke's reassurances, her very presence on the line, her promise, Brooke may promise that all is well and hang up after insisting she'll be home soon, act as a bomb. Hope is left clutching the phone, the echo of her mother's voice of fragile comfort against the stark reality of the danger that just transpired. The weight of the news is too immense to bear alone. Turning to Liam, her confidant even amidst their complexities, Hope will fill Liam in on what she heard from Brooke. Her retelling will be fragmented, laced with the shock still vibrating through her, the fall, the water, the sheer luck of Ridge being there, the hospital. Liam will be just as shocked over the danger that erupted in Naples. His own history with Brooke, fraught as it might be, is overshadowed by the universal horror of a near drowning, especially involving Hope's mother. He'll absorb the chaos, the randomness of it, the terrifying what-if. Liam will hear the same chaotic story from Hope, his expression mirroring her dismay, his immediate response one of shared concern and disbelief at the violent disruption of the Italian Idol. But then, as the initial shockwaves settle, a different kind of realization might dawn, particularly for Hope, the eternal optimist, the believer in destiny and love's enduring power. Watching Liam process the news, Hope may ultimately shift gears and wonder if this could be a blessing in disguise for Brooke's romantic future. The sheer, undeniable heroism of Ridge's act, the raw vulnerability and open devotion he displayed in the aftermath, the way Brooke spoke of him as her savior, it all paints a picture starkly different from the cold estrangement or bitter clashes of recent months. This near tragedy, Hope might silently muse, could be the violent, necessary jolt to shatter the remaining barriers between her mother and the man whose name has been inextricably linked with hers for a lifetime. The terrifying plunge into the Mediterranean might just have thrown Brooke and Ridge back into the same life raft, forcing them to confront the undeniable, life-saving truth of their bond, setting the stage for a reunion forged not just in history, but in the white-hot crucible of a second chance snatched from the jaws of the sea itself. The hospital room in Naples becomes more than a place of recovery, it transforms into the unexpected, sterile setting where the tides of fate for Brooke and Ridge may have irrevocably turned.